All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Starr. I'm the principal here at Longview, and we are excited to share with you some information about Maryland DDA, that's the Developmental Disabilities Administration, as well as some other waivers and supports that the state of Maryland has to support individuals with disabilities and their families. So we are excited to have two great speakers here today, Ms. Parisa Cook, as well as Adriana Friedman, who are going to share some great information that hopefully is helpful to you. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Cook, and then Ms. Friedman will also be sharing some information with us. At the end, if there are any additional questions, you're welcome to ask those, and let's get started. So thank you again to our presenters. We really appreciate your time. And Ms. Cook, you are up.
Absolutely. Okay, great. My name is Parisa Cook. I work with the Maryland Department of Health. Community First Choice Program is the name of our program. And our program exists to help people who need extra help at home because of a health issue. It is for people who have Medicaid. So in order to be in the program, you do have to have full active community Medicaid. But as long as you are, you can be referred and we'll go from there. Let's see. So yeah, it's for people who need extra help at home because of a health issue. What most people use it for is a personal care aide, somebody that comes in and helps with things like bathing, dressing, preparing meals. And then we provide some other stuff too, like home delivered meals, monitoring by a nurse, environmental adaptations to the home, like wheelchair ramps, shower rails, personal emergency response systems, disposable medical equipment and supplies, things like that. So yeah, it's for people of all ages. Really, the only requirement to be referred at all is that you have Medicaid. And we don't have anything to do with putting people in and or out of Medicaid. But as long as you have full active community Medicaid, the way to get referred to our program is actually just to give us a call, 410-767-1739. We take our referrals over the phone like that. There's no paperwork or anything like that to be done when you refer somebody. So you just call us. We just need their full Medicaid number, and then we talk and go from there. Then we can go ahead and put in a referral and get things moving. Like I said, what most people use it for is the personal care aide. And it can be a family member or friend as well. A family member or friend can be the paid caregiver, except there is a caveat where if the participant or the client is under 18, a parent or legal guardian cannot be the paid caregiver, but like a different family member could do it, or a friend or anyone of your choosing. Now, also, if you don't have anybody that you know that you want to use, we can send somebody in. That's no problem. So, but most people do have somebody that they prefer. And if not, that's fine. We go ahead and send an aide. And it's pretty easy. I mean, pretty straightforward. You get assigned, we call them supports planners, but they're like a caseworker for the program. Each client is assigned to one. And that person is going to, they basically handhold you through the process. It's super easy. After you're referred, they'll be giving you a call. They'll come over and meet with you. You'll explain your needs to them, of the services that we provide, kind of what you were hoping to get out of it, what you could utilize. They put in your requests, the things that you feel would help your family, help the client. And then as long as that's approved by us at the state, which it usually is, then services start from there. And the supports planner oversees the enrollment the whole time. They call periodically regardless to check in. It's once a month unless you waive it, but they call once a month anyway to make sure services are running smoothly. And if they're not, or if you ever have any issues in the interim, which people do, you just give them a call and they help you resolve everything. So it's really easy for the client. There's no paper, there's nothing, the supports planner just walks you through the entire process. And then you remain in the program unless like let's like in a circumstance that would disenroll you from any program, like you move to another state or well, any state program, you move to another state or you lost your Medicaid or something like that. Also, there is a nursing assessment at the beginning of the program and every year after. And you do have the client also has to meet what's called level of care to be in our program, which basically means yes, when the nurse goes and does the assessment, this person does need the services that we provide. And so the one other way to be disenrolled is if, let's say the first year you meet the level of care and then another year you don't, which hardly ever happens because nobody, generally people with health issues or a disability, it's not as if it just goes away or gets better, with the exception of some of our like cancer patients or somebody like that. In that case, you might not need the program anymore because your health, resolved itself. But otherwise, you can stay in the program forever. I mean, people are in it for years and years and years. So that's kind of the entire gist of it, I think. But I'm happy to answer any. I know that was like a lot to, but make sure, especially if nothing else, the way to refer yourself or anybody that you know is 410-767-1739. Easy. You just give us a call and we get moving from there.
Teresa, I do have a question. If you could provide a little bit more explanation. Many of the families, at Longview, it's 21 and under the school.
Okay.
So it's elementary, middle school, but students with some complex medical disabilities that would definitely qualify. But Minnie, how do you advise a family to even just go right in? You said you must have medical assistance for the CFC program, which stands for what? CFC.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
That's
like, what is
okay.
medical?
Yes.
It stands for Community First Choice.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to speak that, but how would you advise a family that they know they need help, their medical challenges, but they don't yet have the medical assistance? So, what would be that first step in order to then go to you?
So first they would have to, of course, obtain the medical assistance. Are you talking about how would they do that?
Yes, like
Because I can,
what would
yeah.
be their first step for that?
Okay, so if you have no medical assistance and you're not even sure if you'd qualify or not because you haven't kind of looked into it yet, yep, two ways. You can either call Maryland Medicaid, which that number is 855-642-8572. Or in the county that you live in, you can visit the local Department of Social Services Monday through Friday, regular business hours. They take walk-in clients, kind of like the DMV. You can just go there and you can talk to someone face to face about obtaining but anybody can apply for Medicaid. You would either call that number or, I like to do things in person usually because it's just easier for me to get everything resolved. So everyone's different, but you can also go to the local DSS. And then once it's confirmed that your Medicaid is active or the client's Medicaid is active, that's when you'd give us a call. We can't do anything if you've already applied for Medicaid, but it's still in the works and it's not actually officially granted yet. But as soon as it's granted, we can see that and you can call us and we can go ahead and put in a referral.
Okay, great. Thank you for that information. I have one other follow-up question too, and then we can open it to parents just for clarification. You talked about how family members, parents and guardians can't be hired, but do you have a list of nursing supports and nursing agencies that you contract with that are under CFC?
Yep. So So do you mean like for the personal care aides
Yes, the providers. Like, how do you screen your providers? So if a family was calling CFC and they were going to get support services, where do your providers come from? I think that would give us a source of
I
understanding.
see. Yes. I don't have like the list on me right now, but we do have there's a bunch. They're registered with our program, personal care agencies. And so whether it is a family member or friend, or you don't have anybody and you just want somebody sent in, the supports planner, I wish we just kind of called them caseworkers because it's easier to refer that way because that explains more of what they do. But your supports planner will then come over when you're together at your initial meeting. They'll show you all of the personal care agencies that we work with in your county. And and then they'll explain, the differences between them. They work with them regularly, so they know about the various agencies. And, you're free to do your own research too, of course, and you can ask your supports planner all kind of questions about that. And then you'll go ahead and choose one. And any provider or anything that you pick, including your supports planner, you can switch any time. You can change your personal care aide. You can change your supports planner. Anything you want to do, it's easy, and it can be immediate, no issue. Also, I guess it should include that it's all covered by Medicaid. There's not a penny to pay for anything having to do with our program.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, I want to open up to any parents because Ms. Cook has to leave in about 7 minutes. So I wanted to open this up to parents too, if anybody had any specific questions, or the staff team that's on this call. Do we have any questions?
Yes, the first one is there like a formula or something that determines like supports personal care aides, or those types of?
I'm sorry, I don't know if it's my computer or if it was your screen. Was Sarah kind of cutting off for other people too, or was it just me? Oh, okay. Yeah, Sarah, I wasn't able to really hear your question. Your video and audio was cutting in and out a bit.
Sorry, let me try again. I think I was in a hole, but
Sure.
my question was, is there a formula or a standard rate of like how much support CFC provides a family, such as how many hours of personal care supports or something like that? Like, how was that determined?
So the only like hard and fast, or the only firm thing about that at all is that the maximum anybody can receive is 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't go above 12 hours, 7 days a week. But between that, we have there's some clients that only need 3 hours of help once a week. There's some that need 12 hours every single day. So it's on a totally individual basis. The supports planner comes over, you'll explain, how many hours of help a day or a week you do need. They'll put in for that request. They'll submit that to us at the state. We'll review it and generally approve it. And as sometimes if it's kind of iffy, or like they can't determine like easily, oh yes, this is obviously this person needs 12 hours a day or whatever they've asked for, they might ask the supports planner for some clarification, like, can you send us a task schedule, like kind of explain these hours. We can deny or negotiate, I guess, which is a newer thing they've started doing in the program, where it's like, okay, if the reviewer doesn't see that it's, let's say, 40 hours a week, but they're like, okay, it seems like based on the task schedule they could use 35. Sometimes there's some back and forth like that. But generally what people need and request is approved as long as it's justified and makes sense. And if not, or if we approve you for less than you really need more than what we've said or something like that, for everything regarding the program, there's the opportunity to appeal. And the appeal process is easy. You just submit a request for an appeal and then you attend a hearing, and it's not one of those like farce appeals things where it's just for show and we always rule in the state's favor. Almost every appeal I've ever seen in the system went in the client's favor. So it's worth doing, if you end up in that situation.
Thank you. My second question is, I guess, a two-part question. One is, can you speak a little bit about the appropriate duties for a personal care aide? For example, is the personal care aide, is it appropriate for them to support with like bathing?
Sure. Yeah. So it has to be what we call or covered services are activities of daily living is what we call them. So yes, things like bathing, dressing, preparing meals, medication management, grooming stuff, and like light housekeeping. I mean, they're not meant to be paid to like be like a housekeeper or like come and clean your whole house or anything, but things that have to do with the health um status, like for instance, like changing bedding as often or as much as necessary, changing clothes, maybe throwing on a wash when for people that have accidents and things like that, cleaning up the dishes after meals, stuff like that. Oh, and they can't they don't take people anywhere. Like I know sometimes people want someone to accompany them somewhere. It's all on, at the home where the client lives. So they don't pay for things that are, like accompanying them to a doctor's appointment or anything like that. But part of what the support planner can help arrange is transportation and such, if that's something that the person needs through the state.
Can the person be at the home by themselves with the individual with the disability, or does another?
But yeah, of course, this is all ultimately up to the family, obviously. But yes, that the idea is that they can and should be there alone. They can absolutely, like, if you need them to be there for however many hours, knowing that you are gone, that's the point of it, is that you have somebody there that can take care of the client completely, without needing like an additional, without needing to be told or helped with that. Yeah, somebody that can fully take the reins, and be left alone with the client if necessary, but that's not required either.
Last question, because I know you got to go, and I've been hogging all the questions. It's my understanding, though, if a individual has like a G tube or things like that, can the personal care aide provide like G tube feeding or those types of things, or is that not under their purview?
As far as I understand, I don't think, I know that like when it gets a bit too medically complex, it's not something I'm pretty sure the answer to that one is no, that wouldn't be something that they but I should double check on that actually and get back to you. I'm almost positive it's no. But because I think that veers a bit more medical, and these the aides that the agencies hire aren't like nurses or anything like that, but they have been trained and such, like, and cleared and everything like that. It's just that they're not medically trained as far as like a nurse, a full-on nurse or anything.
I lied. One last question. If
But I'm
a
gonna double
family,
check that anyway, Sarah. Sorry.
no, that's cool. If a family is receiving services through REM or the model waiver or something like that, are they allowed to also get services through CFC too?
Yep. So there are a lot of clients that are in both. Sometimes if the let me see how I can explain it. So yes, you can absolutely be in more than one program. Sometimes if the services look like they're going to be duplicate, like they do look at the other program though. Like for instance, the amount of hours you request or such, the reviewer will look at what you're receiving from REM to determine what what to approve or not. So sometimes specific services, or let's say amount of hours or things like that, might be denied, or because you're receiving something from REM. But yes, anybody, and it's not going to mess up anything that anyone's already receiving. Like there's nothing, getting yourself or your relative referred to our program cannot ruin anything you already have going. It wouldn't work, you wouldn't need to worry about anything like that. Like there's no harm in referring. Nothing can go wrong or bad.
That's great to know. Thank you so much for everything. Are there any other last questions for Ms. Cook?
Yeah, I got like 3 minutes if anyone has any. I don't mind.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions, but thank you because for joining us last minute as of last week. We really appreciate your time and I appreciate having a contact to you directly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you guys come up with any follow-up questions, you have my email. So, and my phone number's on there. So, we can talk and I'll look into that one about G-tube because I'm pretty sure it's no, but I'm going to double check and I'll let you know if it's not. So, but, anyway, of course, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure seeing everybody and, I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so now we're going to hear from Adriana Friedman, our fantastic transition support specialist who serves Longview. She works in a direct capacity supporting our students who are ages 14 and older. But Adriana, we really appreciate you coming and talking to us a little bit more about DDA, so that our families of students who are younger than 14 also can have a deeper understanding of what this is, and maybe they may want to be interested in signing up for these supports earlier. So thank you so much for coming to help us learn a little bit more about what DDA is.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I've been with Longview School and I have multiple schools in Montgomery County. I work out of the Transition Services Office and serve directly Longview, as Sarah said, as one of the schools in my caseload. So I do not work for DDA, but I am doing the presentation on DDA because it's very important for our families to learn about it. And we are here to support you if you want to do the application. I'm going to talk about the steps. I think it's a really good consideration to do DDA to just get your child's name on it. DDA stands for the Developmental Disabilities Administration. It is a state of Maryland. And in the state of Maryland, there are several different offices. So the offices for families that are at Longview for the community, we all work with the DDA Southern Maryland Regional Office. So again, there's all different regions. DDA is our Southern Maryland regional office. Since we are a small group, if you have a question right on there, please just raise your hand. Kayla, if you could, since I have the screen on too, if you see that any parent has a question, just stop me. Very informal. This is really our purpose is to provide you with the information and the resources. So any questions you have. So the first slide. So DDA, what do they do? Who are they? Again, I said they're with the state of Maryland. They provide funding for individuals with developmental disabilities. This organization also partners with individuals with developmental disabilities and their families to provide leadership and resources that enable individuals in living and fulfilling their lives. And it's guided by the principle that individuals with developmental disabilities have the right to direct their lives and services. So when we're talking about individuals with disabilities through DDA, we're talking about sometimes prior to age 21, families may qualify for support. And we're also talking about post-secondary. When they exit Montgomery County Public Schools, post-secondary options will be funded through DDA based on eligibility. I'll be talking a little bit more about that. The next slide. This is a range of services, support services that DDA offers. Under each area, they have their own different funding stream. So you may get some of these services, you wouldn't get all of them, but you should be very familiar with what services to advocate as your child is growing, and the services and support needs may change. But a number of different services that many of our families receive might be assistive technology and services, behavioral support services, environmental assessment. They will come out to your house and do an assessment of your environment, and you may get funding for environmental modifications. Again, everything with DDA is based on eligibility. So become familiar with what support services are offered and how to advocate and ask for them. So it's all based on eligibility, funding availability, and your need and how you're going to document that need. So they also have day programs. So when your child exits Montgomery County Public Schools at age 21, they may be eligible for funding to have a meaningful day program, as well as personal supports that we talked about earlier under CFC. DDA also has their own separate waiver program, which we'll talk about later, is the Community Pathways Waiver. So they're different waivers to be familiar with. And it can feel overwhelming. So please don't hesitate to ask me any questions about the distinctions between the waivers. But there's respite care, there's supported living, there's vehicle modifications. Now, it's very important, you see nursing here, but it is only consultation or case management delegation. They do not provide direct nursing services. DDA does not. They might do case management of your nursing services in the house, but they will not provide. That's the one thing DDA does not pay for, is direct service nursing. And that's why they would work in partnership with other waiver programs that have that service if that's a need for your son or daughter. So this is an overview. Now, this is a long list, and so it's hard to understand what each area means. So on the next slide, I wanted to bring to your attention that DDA has a guide to services. In this guide, and I believe you'll probably, I'm happy to share this presentation, but in this guide, if you scroll down, it will have all the definitions of what those services are. So for example, for assistive technology, it will explain what DDA's definition is, or for environmental modifications or assessments. It also explains the whole process of DDA. This guide is really great. It's really informative. The electronic link, we can follow up with everybody. Actually, that's probably a good idea, so you can understand DDA and why it's so important to get an application in for your child. So this guide is wonderful. It has everything in it, and it has other resources. And then the last pages also describe the different waiver programs, like we heard tonight about CFC waivers. So just wanted to highlight this guide and understanding it. So thank you. So it's a good guide full of resources, and it will explain all the services that DDA offers in much more detail. So the next slide, that's okay. Going to go to the next slide. It hasn't popped back up yet. I think it just popped out when you did the link, but thank you, because it's really important to open up that guide and see all those valuable resources there. Okay, great. So you might go back one or two slides. I think. Back another slide. Okay, then the next slide. No, and then forward. And then, okay, now one more slide back. Okay, then the next slide. Okay, so what is the application process? Sorry, apologize about that. So the application process, I'm going to talk a little bit about it tonight, because I do think it's important to get your child's name on the list, and we'll talk about why. Because DDA does have a wait list, and it is based on eligibility under 21. So the first step is to fill out the application. And the application itself, we're going to dive into it a little bit later, but it's 7 pages long. It's not that long, but the process can be lengthy, and then we'll talk about that. But the actual application is about 7 pages long. And then when you submit the application, you're going to include supporting document. And typically the 2 documents that are most critical is your child's psychological assessment, which documents that they do have an intellectual or developmental disability. So they want a psychological assessment that's within 3 years. They only accept psychologicals within 3 years. So we can work with the school on seeing when your child's last psychological assessment was. And then we would put together the psychological, the IEP, and the application. On here it lists medical documentation. Sometimes they'll ask for that later, but to get the initial application in, the 3 critical pieces are the psychological, the IEP, and the completed DDA application. So once you do that, we are here to support you. I am here to support you. If you want to do the application on your own, that's great. If you want to set up a meeting with me, I'll come to Longview, or we can set up a virtual meeting. Kayla as well, our parent educator on the panel tonight as well. We would like to really help you get this application in, and then we can submit it for you. And so once you get the application in, DDA has 7 days to tell you we've received your application, and you will receive just an acknowledgement. Actually, they do an automatic email, which if we're submitting your application, we'll receive the email and we forward it to you. That's just verification that your application was successfully submitted to DDA and received. Then they do what's called a comprehensive assessment. This is completed by what's called a coordinator of community services agency. This is referred to as CCS. So you hear a lot of acronyms tonight. So CCS is the coordinator of community services. They are the people that are contracted by DDA. It's a third party, and they are the ones that would complete what we call an eligibility interview. This is a face-to-face interview. They have to meet with your child. So typically it's about 45 minutes to an hour, and they will just ask history, family questions, support needs. It's just interviewing you based on when was your child diagnosed with a disability. I mean, they do ask some repetitive, routine questions. It's a standard format interview that they have to complete. Once they receive that application and DDA notified you, the CCS agency has 45 business days to complete this. So nothing happens overnight with DDA. So they have 45 business days to complete it, and they actually have up to 90 days to complete it and return it to DDA. Then DDA is responsible for making what we refer to as an eligibility determination. Is your child going to be eligible for services? Eligibility does not mean they're going to get it. It means that they're determined that they meet the criteria for DDA. So we'll talk about what the next steps would be after they get eligible. So determination is then made by DDA. The next slide, perfect. So this is such a wonderful resource here. So I wanted to share it with families on understanding DDA. There are 5 short videos that are produced in collaboration with DDA and an organization in Montgomery County called Potomac Community Resources. You may already be familiar with them, but they do a lot of outreach, a lot of training. We partner with them for a lot of MCPS trainings as well. But they produce these videos, and they also are the presentation slides are available as well, and also every video is done with American Sign Language support as well, translation. So the 5 videos, the first video is about, we're not going to click on the videos, but the 5 videos, the first one is on the DDA application and the process and submission, which we're going to go over tonight. The next one is explaining DDA's eligibility determination category. So that's the next step once you've submitted your application. Then it talks about the different services offered by DDA. The 4th one talks about the role of the CCS provider, and that one's really important because that person's going to be your advocate to help you get services, and you're going to talk to them about what services you need. And then the last one is the different DDA Medicaid waivers that are available. That one's a little dated because they have converted as of October. There's only one DDA waiver. So all services are under what's called the Community Pathways Waiver, often referred to as the CPW waiver from DDA. So the top 4 videos are really good to watch. The videos are not very long. And so it's good to watch to understand the whole process. The more you read and hear about it, the better to understand and be able to advocate for your child for some support services. The next slide. So the DDA application comes in 3 languages, Spanish, English, and Arabic. It's 7 parts. So I wanted to just break it down because some people feel like, oh, I don't have all the information. It's going to be too much to write. And, I can't do it right now. I really want to emphasize that it's 7 pages and it's pretty basic. So the information that they're really going to be looking at is the IEP, the psychological, and some of the general information. So we're here to support you again to make this feel less overwhelming. But the part 1 is just general application information. Part 2 is applicant self-assessment. So that's going to be like, do you need full, what types of supports do you need? Things about like, how do you communicate? Again, I want to emphasize like what feeding supports do you need? And this is where you would indicate, if you need to pureed food or if you're G-tube for feeding. I mean, there's all kinds of check boxes. These are literally check boxes. And so in this case, we really want to emphasize your child's support needs. Your child has a lot of strengths. And, at Longview, we're building on those strengths. But for this application for DDA, you really want to emphasize those support needs. And the reason being is because this is going to align to support, which aligns to funding, which aligns to trying to get the funding for the support. So we're really going to focus on your child's higher level of support needs. Part 3 is other services. This again is a checkbox for what services do they get in the school system: PT, OT, speech and language, nursing. This is where you would indicate that, and these are checkboxes. Part 4 is authorization to request and receive services. That is going to be just a release that you sign where we indicate from Longview School that you can exchange information as they go through the eligibility process. Part 5 is a caregiver guardian contact. So that would be you as a parent or you as a guardian. The primary caregiver will have your information, your age, your address, all of those things. Part 6 is your child's statistical information, male, female, race, those kinds of things that go under that. And then Part 7 is the actual signature. This is a DDA application. The Spanish and the Arabic are supported in both English and the translated language. So it would be very easy for us to support you even in the other language because all the information is all the questions and everything are in both languages. So this is just to give you kind of a snapshot of the application. And I hope that breaks down some of the anxiety of how much information you might need to gather before you start this process. It's really manageable. And again, we're here to support you. The next slide. So what's next? You've got the application. We have the documentations. Either Kayla and I have submitted it. By the way, you would have to sign a 33632 release of confidential information. We will not be able to send any information to DDA without a parent's signature providing permission for us to do that. So what is next? You submitted. We talked about the coordinator of community service. Comes to your house, does a face-to-face, and we can even have the interview. Sometimes we've done it at Longview School, so because they do have to meet your child, and so we don't want to always pull the child out of school. It's your decision. You can request to have it at school if we have spacing available. So once that CCS provider that's assigned, again, they're a third party, they're contracted by DDA, they will submit their completed assessment, their completed comprehensive assessment, which is that interview. To DDA, and then DDA has an additional 45 to 60 days. Now remember, the CCS assessment is 45 days upon receipt of the application. Then they finish that interview, and DDA then has 45 to 60 days to make that final eligibility decision. Will your child be eligible for services? It doesn't mean they're going to get it. It just means do they meet DDA's criteria? So the total process from the initial application to the final determination can take 90 days or more. So just to give you kind of an idea, if it's more than 90 days, I would call DDA or contact us and say we haven't heard from them, because sometimes there are glitches or they have a wrong number or something like that. There are things that do happen. But that's kind of letting you know. What is that eligibility criteria for DDA? Is a developmental disability, the way that they define it by the COMAR regulations, is a physical or mental impairment, but not just mental illness, or it can be a combination of mental and physical impairment. It will more than likely continue forever. It started before you turn 22. You need supports or assistance to live independently, and you need the support of a team to help you with the services and treatment. That is the eligibility criteria. So then the interview, the application, the IEP, everything is providing the documentation of this criteria. Next slide. So if DDA does approve your child eligible for services, there are priority categories, and this is really important to understand. Priority categories are the order of priority in which the applicant, your child, would receive services. Priority categories help DDA serve people with the greatest needs first. So there is, again, I talked about how it's based on funding availability. So they can't serve everybody that applies, but then they do put them in a priority category. So the first priority category they refer to as crisis resolution. This means you're currently in a crisis or an emergency situation. For example, abuse, neglect, homeless. Other situations have been when a parent, a single parent or the primary caregiver has a critical diagnosis like cancer or something. So these are crisis resolutions. It means you're currently in the crisis. The second category that DDA may determine you are in crisis prevention. That means you are or will be in a health or safety crisis within the next year, or you have a caregiver that's 65 or older. The next category is current requests. This means you need or want services though health and safety are not an immediate need. It's a hardship, but it's not an immediate need. So that would be the current request. So you're requesting services, and then they're going to determine where and why. And then the fourth category, which many families fall under, is called future needs. You are not looking for services now, but will need services within the next 3 or more years. If you're currently getting services through the school system or other programs, the other waiver programs, such as the autism waiver, you'll probably be in this future needs because you can't be in certain waivers. We learned tonight you can be model waiver or REM with CFC, but if you're like an autism waiver, you can't be in a DDA waiver at the same time. So there's certain requirements around that. So a CCS provider on the long term, so now there's one that does the eligibility interview. They're one and done. You won't see them again. But sometimes you get assigned you might be eligible to be assigned a CCS provider that will be in contact with you annually, just to make sure how's your situation, has anything changed. If you're in future needs, you won't have a CCS provider, but when your child turns 18, they will get that because they're going to be within 3 years of graduating the school system. So we're going to be needing to access funding, that funding for adult services. If it's prior to 21, that funding would be falls along the lines of personal supports in the home. You're not going into an adult day program, but DDA will fund for an adult day program. So it's important to understand these priority categories because if for some reason your situation changes, you can contact the regional office. I talked about us being the Southern Maryland regional office. So you would contact that regional office. So for example, if you are an older caregiver and you're coming to the age of 65 or older, or if you have back issues or some kind of health issues that makes it a hardship for lifting your child, for changing, for the level of care that they need, for safety, your situation has changed. So then you might be on a current request and then they might move you to crisis prevention. So that's how you move up the ladder, so to speak, to get support services. So you want to think about what is your need, what documentation can you provide to DDA, and how can you advocate strongly for what you need for the services. So understanding these priorities, because then you're in the system, you'd be determined eligible, but you're on a category. So the next slide. So I talked about DDA changing. So there's only one waiver now. They used to have other names and other services, but all services under DDA now fall under the Community Pathways waiver. It makes things a lot easier. And then you can do different funding streams under the support services that I talked about that are listed in the guide. So Community Pathways waiver is what DDA's waiver is. And DDA services are usually paid for by Medicaid through the Community Pathways waiver. When the DDA has funding for your priority category and you have the greatest need, you're on that list, your CCS will help you with the DDA waiver application. Then you're going to complete the application to get into that waiver for the funding to activate and supports to start. The DDA waiver application is the next step to get those services. So once DDA has determined you are eligible for those services, you must apply for the DDA waiver so that DDA can use the Medicaid funding for your services. That is where your CCS provider is going to really be key in helping you put it all together. Your CCS will do the waiver application with you. So you're on the waiting list because you've been determined eligible. You're in a priority category, and then DDA has funding for your priority category, and you have the need. You've provided your documentation for the need. Sometimes they have what's called a waitlist initiative. So they look at all the people on the wait list. And they say, okay, we have this amount of funding and we're going to try to serve as many people as we can to meet their needs. So that's why I think it's always good to get your child's name in the DDA system and, keep them there because, you never know when your situation might change and you may need support services. And then in turn, you may be eligible for it. So it's understanding what services are out there and how to advocate. The next slide. So the CCS provider, like I said, you're going to have somebody. It's confusing because you're going to have one person come that's one and done. That's just for the eligibility interview. You'll never see that person again. But when you are assigned a CCS provider, there are multiple agencies that DDA contracts with. You typically stay with the same person. There is turnover. That's the reality. But some of the CCS providers do have long-term standing people. So you're with the agency. You can always make a change if you're not happy, but you're assigned the same contact person who may be working with you annually, quarterly. It will just depend on what you're eligible for. But the CCS provider will help you and your family access services, including planning, advocating, and monitoring with key providers in the community. So they will actually help you find providers as well that accept DDA funding. Remember, DDA isn't providing the services, they're providing the funding for approved providers to give you the services. Next slide. So the CCS provider works with the family on finding out the individual, your child's wants and needs prior and or post school. So sometimes you can get services for under 21. Sometimes you will be eligible for services when many families think, what happens when my child exits Montgomery County Public Schools or exits Longview School? They'll go to school until age 21, and then they will go to adult services. And you have options for adult services. You have programs in the community that provide the level of supports that your child needs in terms of personal management, meaningful activities, things like that, and assistive technology, as well as the level of care they need for personal management, like toileting, feeding, those kinds of things. Some programs have nurses on staff. And then you can also create your own program, which is called self-directed, where you hire a staff person and you create your own activities for your child. So those are adult services options. So DDA is going to be the key and primary organization that's going to fund based on eligibility. So when I say post-school, that's what I mean. And I kind of wanted to just touch on that just a little bit so that you know that there are fundings and there are programs from when your child does exit Longview School at age 21. The CCS provider coordinates and connects people to communities, to adult services. They assist to identify all the potential providers or many providers. And actually, in the last couple of years, we've seen a huge expansion in providers and services in Montgomery County. We often have resource pairs, MCPS does, so we encourage you to get out there and learn about the different programs. They'll complete your paperwork for waiver enrollment, like I talked about, the community pathways waiver. Once you're in, DDA applications getting in the system, and then there's a different application to actually get into the waiver. And then develop what's called a person-centered plan, and that is a plan that's all about you, your child, what they want, what your vision is, what their level of care needs, what their supports are, what their preferences are, their interests. So that's just a personal-centered plan. It's a form. And it's a long form, and it really goes into what is your vision. So the CCS will monitor the implementation of your PCP and your satisfaction with services, and they'll coordinate an annual review and PCP update. So similar to like an IEP, but it's not 45 to 50 pages. It's smaller, your goals with DDA. Your CCS will also be advocating for your child and assist in self-advocacy efforts to ensure that he or she remains at the center of the transition into adult services or the supports that are happening in the home prior to 21. They'll also assist with locating and implementing generic resources in the community. They have a lot of information and they're there to help. So Montgomery County, like I said, contracts with many different CCS agencies. This is just a few of them. There are actually probably like maybe 3 or 4 new ones. Sometimes there are new ones that come in. Many of them have backgrounds in terms of, working with, like I said, DDA does not provide direct nursing, but they'll work with other programs that do have nursing to make sure that the personal care and the nursing don't overlap, but they work in collaboration and they have knowledgeable background. So these are several of them. Most agencies, CCS, always have openings. DHHS is the only one that has a wait list. They only have 400 capacity. So there is a wait list for that. But most of the other agencies, so DDA will ask you to choose an agency if you're eligible for CCS services. So think of them as like your resource coordinator. And then if you choose an agency and you're not happy, or there's too many turnovers or something, you are always able to change. So you're never locked into one CCS provider, but they are going to be your hub for getting you what you need. And so it's important that this is a strong person, but it's also important for you as a parent to really know these services so that you can ask for them and advocate for them. The next slide. So basically, let's get started. You can schedule a time to complete your DDA application. Kayla and I are both here. The next step after we do the application, at the same time, you'll sign MCPS's 33632 release form. That will allow us to submit it to you, to submit it to DDA. We need to know when your child's psychological assessment was, and their IEP can be within the year, so all of their IEPs are current. So those would be the supporting documents that we would submit initially. And so we will support the submission for you and your child's DDA and supporting documents. But then the next steps would be, after we did this, you would be on the lookout for a CCS provider to contact you and to set up that eligibility interview. And again, once we submit the application, that time period is 45 days that they have to meet with you and the eligibility, and then another 45 days for DDA to review the paperwork and make a determination on your eligibility. So you basically, filling out this application now is getting your child on a wait list. It's getting your child on a wait list, which has those different priority categories, and then you advocate and you get the documentation and you get what you need. It's a fight. It is a fight, but once you get in the DDA system and once you get services, they continue. So it is a strong advocacy in the beginning, but once you're in the system. You are in the system. So you've determined the need and you've been given the support. So really review the support services in that manual, the link that we provide to you, because again, they do things, they will help in the home if they can. There is funding challenges right now. It's all over the news. So it is a tough time, but you may find yourself in an emergency and then you're already in the eligibility system. And then you just get bumped up on the priority. And we do have families that, it's unexpected emergencies happen and you're going to need some more supports. And so you don't have to start. You're already in the system. And so it's a matter of bumping up the categories. The next slide. The next slide is my contact information. Again, it's probably on Longview's website as well, but you could always call your classroom teacher and get a message to me, and I'm happy to help. We have a website, which is also under the highlighted transition services, that will have all of our parent meetings and training. Transition services typically start for your child at age 14. That's when you first see it in the IEP, or when they're 13 and they're going into turning 14 that year of the IEP cycle. So that goes all the way up to 21. So that's really where we do a lot of planning for that transition from school to post-secondary options. But it's never too soon to start and to get your names on these lists and learn about these services and to try to advocate and get some support services earlier if you need them. And I think that's the last slide. Any questions?
Well, Adriana, while people formulate their questions, just want to thank you again. That was a lot of very awesome information and resources, and just all of it was fabulous. So thank you so much for putting that together and taking the time to explain all of that. I know I learned a lot too, and I hope our other people watching this learned as well. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn off the recording so that, hold on one second.